Hello. Now this isn't the live version, but this is the version you'll get in case of an emergency. You've heard who I am, and in case of emergency, you won't hear the song. Not from this anyway. But the song is a great song that was produced for St. Augustine College in Manila. It's entitled One Mind, One Heart. It's quite a lively song. It involves the Augustinians at this college, the staff, and the students, from very young up to the graduates. They all appear very happy, very lively, and it's a song that speaks to me from the heart to the heart. It's called One Mind, One Heart. It reminds me of where I am in life and where I belong. Because my context is that I live here as an Augustinian on mission in Bangkok, Thailand, and I live on my own in an apartment, and I've been here for 15 years and happily here. Happily here on mission, working with refugees and migrants and for them. But that song speaks to me and reminds me to my core who I am. That I'm really not living here alone, that I don't operate alone, but I'm very much an Augustinian, and that it is a transformative song for me, because in reminding me who I am and where I belong in the world and the church, it gives me great hope. I don't stand alone. I don't work alone. I work with the order, with my order. I work with the church. And I've been here for 15 years. I remember until today the date I arrived. I don't know why. The 5th of October 2005. I came here for 1 year to be a volunteer with Maryknoll. 1 year led on to the next and the next until 15 years later. Within my first few months of being here, I was introduced to Caritas Thailand. And here I have worked for 15 years this coming January. And I name that as it has evolved, my tasks with Caritas Thailand have two main features or serve two main purposes. One is pastoral and the other is organizational. Pastoral is hands-on, face-to-face work that I do with a population I never even knew existed, but I discovered through living here, urban refugees. When I first heard the term, I thought they sound like terrorists, or that's the title. But I discovered a population living out there in the community that have come to Bangkok from the Congo, Somalia, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all over the years, and they've come here seeking safety, UN protection, asylum, and ultimate resettlement. Their being here lasts for a long time. They are a people who desperately need help, and I have a passion for them. I don't have a solution for their problems, but I believe that my role is to be with them, help as I can, and to show them that somebody cares. That is my pastoral role. My organisational role is Caritas Thailand has been working with the Catholic Commission on Migration, and it started off very much as management, administration and organisation, working in office with staff, working on projects, setting up projects, putting in proposals, writing reports that support the work of Caritas Thailand in working with the migrant populations, migrant worker populations living here throughout Thailand. And there are over 3 million migrant workers in Thailand. Mainly they come from Myanmar. They also come from Laos, Cambodia, and now some from Vietnam. I discovered through my work on the projects another passion, a passion for migrant workers, another population in our midst who can be forgotten, who can be overlooked and abused, a population that is vulnerable and that needs us and needs church. And so my work takes me into what Caritas International names as overall migration. Migration covers all peoples on the move. And so I work with the church through Caritas Thailand on migration. If I look at my work here, I can see that it operates within a culture, within a church that has its strengths and has its weaknesses. Church by nature has its strengths, but church also has its weaknesses. So when I work here with church, I would name the weaknesses as organizational weaknesses, when focusing too much on operating church as business, when focusing too much on structural concerns, on issues around power and around the church as an institution. And then I see within the mindset of the culture here and within the work culture a dependency mindset, which says we need money to do our work, and that is true, but we need to get it elsewhere. I name these for future reference within this presentation. Through my work over the years with Caritas Thailand, I have become part of the effort of the wider Caritas International Confederation or family. I'm involved in work and support of the Caritas Asia, Caritas throughout, obviously, Asia. I work on issues of migration and also communications. I find that in being here, I don't get all these roles because I'm the great expert. I get them because I am here, because I wish to work on doing good and make a contribution, and I simply go forward, put my name down and say, I think I could do this and I want to make a contribution. So I get all these other roles. With Caritas International, I've been involved over the past 6 years with 2 working groups. One has been specifically an advocacy working group on migration, and the other was on a campaign for migration called Share the Journey. Share the Journey has been about activities being presented, being shared throughout the Caritas family that highlight the issue of migration and the needs of all those on the move. The working group on advocacy has been about, yes, writing up discussion papers, working documents, but so those documents, those reports, can be used as a basis for advocating at various levels at an international forum, with the UN, with the EU, with government, and with other NGOs. Throughout all my work, I suppose I see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I have discovered, through my work, through being here, a passion for migrants. That is my work. I am asked in this presentation to look at the transformative nature of the work here, not just mine, but the work here of Caritas Thailand. If I gave a short answer to, is what we do at Caritas transformative, my short response and simple response would be yes and no. A little bit yes, a little bit no, a bit of both. I would then say, how do we judge? How do we judge our successes? It's not based on how good our business is. It's not necessarily about strong structures, although strong structures are important and necessary. It's about the real benchmark of How effective are we in working with and helping those we serve? Basically, is what we are doing at Caritas Thailand producing the product of good development? Is it about and is it achieving to help raise people up out of levels of dependency to becoming more autonomous and becoming interdependent, to allowing poor people and people who are vulnerable to be able to live their life with a greater sense of dignity and purpose, and with a greater sense of we are actors in our lives. We are not just acted upon, but we are people who also make our contribution. Good development, as I understand it, has 4 basic arms. It is rights-based. Is it upholding the human rights of all, the human rights of those we serve? It is people-centered. Obviously, we're looking after people. We're not looking after interests or business or ideologies, but people. Is it needs-based? And is it based on the needs of those who we serve? And that's a very important focus, because very easily, when you're in the business of development, and I name it as a business, that focus, I discover, can be lost or overlooked or downplayed, even within the church, because we can become people who are overwhelmed by the needs of our institution, our structures. We need to keep the focus. And finally, and most importantly, good development is dignity-based. And as people of the Gospels, yes, it is important that we uphold the rights of all, but it be such that it build up the dignity of all. If we look at the Gospels, and my understanding is that the Gospels, the Jesus of the Gospels, is about building up the dignity of people and thereby showing the kingdom of God. And because people who followed Jesus and became part of his project felt and knew that their dignity was raised in the world, so others followed. This dignity is most important. If I go on, are we transformative? For a pastoral church ministering to urban refugees, which is one of my main focus in my ministry, if I base it on great successes, people getting important jobs or anything like that, I'd probably say it's not transformative. I'd look beyond the resettlement, and I hope they all get resettled or find a home at least that's safe and that they feel happy with. But many linger here or linger wherever they are in the world and go on for years waiting for some sort of outcome, some sort of resolution of their issues or problems in life, and they wait and they wait. If I look at what is being transformative with them, I've come to believe it's about taking the long journey with them, accompanying them, letting them know that somebody is there and cares and they are not forgotten, to fill in a gap in some way or other so that they don't lose hope. If they lose hope, they lose everything. Keep hope alive. And there is the transformative element of the pastoral work of mission with urban refugees. Money is important. It surely is. They need money to live, to survive. And I discovered early on in working with this population that while there are many good organisations, church-based and otherwise, every time I tried to get some money for them, they fell through the cracks. They didn't fill the criteria. And I found myself saying, but it's as simple as people need to eat and they need somewhere to live. What do we need to do? And then I discovered in my ministry that, and it was just by accident, I discovered in my ministry that by sharing their story with people I knew or communities that were part of my environment through the church, that people became enlivened. People wanted to give. And money did come forward to do things that really helped them. Food, rent, and education. Because many of their children don't receive an education for many reasons. So you need to be creative, create what we call here learning centres, or enable something to happen to support them in education. And where did I find the money coming from? Good people, people of church, and my order. In my order there is a foundation in Spain which supports children in education throughout the world who find themselves living in situations of great vulnerability and poverty. And that foundation has consistently come forward to help. So I couldn't get help, and I don't complain, from the big agencies of the world, the IOMs and the UNICEFs and all that, but it came from the people and the organisations and the order to which I belong, lying at the heart of who I am, the church. If I move on to the migrant workers, it's a mixed bag. Caritas Thailand has a number of projects supported by various church agencies, Miserio, Missio, Caritas Spain, Manos, and does great work. But in the work that we do, I see both sides. Some of it is band-aid, some of it is limited, but other work is groundbreaking. A groundbreaking project I'm involved in at the moment involves a partnership between Caritas in Thailand and Caritas in Myanmar. And together we work as equal partners as we work for the cause of Burmese migrants who wish to come to Thailand or who are in Thailand. And together we work on the issues of safe migration. Can they go from Myanmar to Thailand safely? Help them to try and do it so that they are registered and can receive all the benefits and receive a just wage. And therefore, through safe migration, we're also acting against the dangers of exploitation and human trafficking, because if they do it the right way, that's less able to happen. What I know and see is that people from Myanmar come to a Thailand because in Myanmar they don't have opportunity. They're not able to get work. They don't have money to live and they don't have money for their families. So they want work and they see it in Thailand. Thailand has the work, and for many of them that's all they want, and they don't worry about safe migration. And so some end up being treated unjustly. Some might get exploited, and then some might be trafficked. Trafficked because they get sort of, shall we say, an invitation, or they see an opportunity that's so good, but it's too good to be true, and they get caught in the trap. So our work, Caritas Thailand and Caritas Myanmar, is working together through international cooperation, working with them in Myanmar to talk about what it's like in Thailand, to talk about how you get there in a good way and the proper way, And the other side, when they get here, what is it that you need to know? What are your rights? What's the labour law? Don't accept bad treatment. And also, if something bad happens or there's an emergency, we will try to help. That is groundbreaking work. And that really enlivens me. And that is transformative. Not in the immediate, but into the future, because of what that can lead to. Caritas Asia. Caritas Asia, I said, I work on a communications group and I do some work on advocacy in migration. I would say that that work is slow and ongoing, but it's with a great team of people who come from various countries, Bangladesh, Singapore, Myanmar, Philippines, and beyond. People who are talented, who want to contribute, and we come together and we do what we can to put the message out there about migration. What are the needs? To put the message out there about Caritas and who we are in terms of development and helping people, and seeing that we can raise the image of Caritas and raise the possibility for more and more people to get involved. We enjoy some good successes. I don't know that it changes the world, but it is part of something that's helping to make the world a better place. Caritas International. As I said, I'll focus on the working group on migration and human trafficking. I believe that working group is now finished. But our work was about coming together from various regions of Caritas. So you have North America, Latin America, Europe, Africa, Middle East, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific, and to discuss the issues around migration and human trafficking. And it might seem boring to go to meetings, but what I discovered was that basically through writing reports, through long laborious hours on writing up presentations on migration and the issues faced throughout the world, that was making some contribution to an international dialogue through Caritas International's representation at the UN, through Caritas working with other bodies in church and other churches, through Caritas working with other NGOs. And it was part of the mix leading into what ultimately becomes a universal stance. And if you want to take the big picture, there are now 2 global compacts in the world on migration. The Global Compact on Migration, the Global Compact on Refugees. Both are groundbreaking. Okay, they have their limitations, they're non-binding, but the fact is most nations in the world signed on to these, and even if they don't follow what they sign on to, they still signed on to these compacts, and they make a commitment to shared principles. They make a commitment to looking after people on the move and doing it properly. I know the pitfalls. I know I'm an Australian. I see what my own country does at times in terms of how it deals with refugees or people seeking asylum and what they do to them. But the fact is these compacts are real and they stand and they give a benchmark. Transformative, a little bit yes, a little bit no. Strengths and weaknesses. And then you look at how do we do it better? Well, I studied social work and it was fascinating. In social work, a working principle that we were given was that in your work over the future years, celebrate your successes, because you might not have that many, but when you have one, celebrate it. And that is important. Celebrate our successes. Now, having said celebrate our successes, this is me, being a good Catholic, educated by the Christian Brothers in Australia. I have no complaints, but I was brought up under a Catholic ethos of the time of, as a Catholic young boy growing into a Catholic man, that you be successful, you be in control, and you be perfect, or that's what you try to reach. I discover none of them work. Perfection, control, or success. I believe, and have come to believe very strongly, that we approach life in the world from the underside. I am vulnerable, I am fragile, but that's not the end of the story. I'm not simply a broken human being. I'm not living life simply to die. But in my vulnerability and my fragility, with a sense of humility, I can reach beyond. And I don't stand alone, I am with others, that we do it together. If I go back to the campaign of Caritas International Migration, I got it here, share the journey. Pope Francis is strong on dialogue, conversation. He presents all the time the ideology, the tool of life that he calls encounter. It comes from Latin America. And it's not just meeting people, but it's encounter, meeting people where they are, talking with them, coming to know them, being with them, and moving on together. Not coming in from on high and saying, this is what I have to give, this is what I'll do for you, but encounter. Pope Francis has become my hero, which, if you knew me, is quite amazing that a pope becomes my hero, but he's a great man. He says many things, and I said before, where I live and work, I can see that church loses it at times when it overemphasizes money, when it overemphasizes the business aspect. And yet money is important, I appreciate that. When it overemphasizes the institutional concerns of its own life. As Pope Francis says, remember, we are not an NGO or a business. We are church. And I see that in my work here. We are best as church when we are church. And the best work we can do is when we are with people. When we are with people where they are. When we are face to face, hand in hand. And we don't need big money for that. But yes, people need money to be able to get what they need so they can live life with dignity, enjoy their rights. It's no good simply saying you have rights and then say go live your rights. They do need something. But what I'm trying to say is that we don't lose the focus, and I see that happening or able to happen. The focus remains always that we are church and we are best when we are church. If I put it another way, for me, working with Caritas is about me being me and working to let people be themselves. It's about living out the gospel, and it's about faith. If I went into a bit of theory, I could share with you, and I won't share a lot, but I could share with you from Caritas International guidelines on doing advocacy. And it says here, advocacy is deeply rooted in the gospel and Catholic social teaching. If indeed the just ordering of society and of the state is a central responsibility of politics, the Church cannot and must not remain on the sidelines in the fight for justice. It goes on. The Caritas Confederation promotes transformative changes by understanding the dynamic of people's contexts, needs, and interests. And finally, it says, Caritas International is committed to just and lasting change in the lives of the people living in subhuman conditions, suffering injustice and poverty, through advocating for them. They are strong principles. And yes, it is theory, but I see that theory applied. And yes, I also know the weaknesses. I'll put it another way. One can say, because there is a high level of divorce in the West, or where I come from, I don't know about elsewhere in the world, one can say, well, what's the point of marriage? Well, I would say, no matter what the bad side is, no matter what the suffering may be, that there is a value to be upheld, and that value needs to be upheld for the sake of humanity. And that no matter what the suffering we see in our world, certain values need to remain the focus and need to remain areas of our concern, no matter what the failures are. So good theory is very important. As it says further on here in the Caritas International guidelines, advocacy is one of the concrete ways of expressing the social dimension of proclaiming the good news. At the heart of advocacy are the poor, and the way of engaging them to challenge injustice and oppression and make changes happen. Advocacy is the process to directly and indirectly influence decision makers and make a contribution to making our world a better place. Involvement as advocacy is vital to Caritas's calling to bring about justice, speak out for truth, defend the poor and oppressed. All very true. And so a key part of the work we do here and anywhere in Caritas, yes, it's about working with people. Yes, you try, if people are caught up in a great crisis, yes, you're there and you look to the needs. But it's about much more. It's about the networking. It's about the speaking out and the speaking up. And what I find here, and one of its great weaknesses is, and I think it's cultural, and I think it's the nature of Thailand, because Thailand is a Buddhist country, 65 million people, and less than 0.5% of the people are Catholics. So the church is very much a minority. It's not a mainstream institution. It's not even understood by most people in Thailand. And by some on authority, it's even feared because it's seen as a Western institution and it's part of the Western imperial powers. And all of this adds up so that the church in Thailand doesn't speak out or speak up enough. And that's some area where we need to make a real effort to address that lack or that weakness, because that's part of who we are as church, to be the voice for those who don't have a voice. And the ones that I work with, they're really outsiders. They come from other countries and they don't come here as success stories. They don't come here with big money. They don't come here to take on the high profile jobs. They come here because they need to, and they come here because in some ways they're poor, they're vulnerable, they're marginalised or they're excluded. So their voice is not there. They need church. We can play a transformative role. And that opportunity is there for us through our being with these peoples, through knowing their lot, and through being able to look at and make some sort of reflection about what's going on and what's wrong here. and what it is that we need to do in our communities to address the needs of their peoples, to address the needs that arise because of injustices and wrongs. So we have a part to play. And this message is only reinforced for me through the time of the pandemic. If I hear the cry of the pandemic, and I hear it from various quarters, there are three main words that stick out: responsibility, respect, and solidarity. The cry of the pandemic. And that's where we need to stand at all times. Responsible for each other and with each other. Not by a sense of standing above and saying I'm better and stronger and I need to do something for you, but responsible because we're in this together. Life is something that belongs to us as all peoples, that we're equal partners, and so we share some responsibility for each other. Respect. Always respect the other. Respect myself. And respect the other who maybe doesn't see that easily that they are worthy of respect. Solidarity, to stand with the other. So, transformation, it's about giving dignity. It's about raising up the poor and marginalised. And it's about allowing people who may be dependent to no longer be dependent, be able to make their own voices heard and be able to make more of their own decisions. Is transformation occurring? Yes, in part it is. In another part, there's a long way to go. So when a worker is unfairly, or workers are unfairly dismissed without pay when they're trapped and then dealt with unjustly, it's about letting them know you have rights here. Don't be walked over. And yes, that's risky. But there are laws in this country and they are there. Take advantage of them. To act respectfully, you have the right to protest, you have the right to have people like Caritas and others to end various working NGOs or whatever, faith-based organisations, to be a voice for you, to speak for you in the right quarters of government or business. It's about when you are told your daughter can make a lot of money if she comes down to Thailand, it's about getting them up there, in there in Myanmar, and saying, watch out. She can maybe make a lot of money, but do you realise what might be happening? And there are cultural issues at play. The culture may be that our daughter needs to look after us. She needs to go work and get money. But to be able to address those cultural weaknesses and say, there's something more important here. Education. Many children of migrants and refugees are not, while they legally can access education, for various reasons can't. Lack of paperwork, lack of language, they're hiding or they're on the move. Well, we can advocate with the local government for education, and there are some real success stories and there are some failures. Or we can work to create centres where they can go informally to pursue an education. We have the rights of women and of children, looking at the issues of child protection, of protection of vulnerable individuals. This is all necessary work. We're only a little church. We're not changing Thailand, but we're making a contribution as we can, and we're making a difference. That is transformative. So what I'm trying to say is, we're not changing the world because of the size we are, but we're making this contribution, and we need to make that, and we need to continue making it, no matter what. And yes, along the way, we know weaknesses, we fail, We're not so good all the time at what we do, and that's for systemic reasons, that's for church institutional reasons, that's for cultural reasons of both church and society. But we do what we can with what we got, and to me that is another working principle. Now, I seem to be doing a lot of talking. I hope that you don't get the emergency version of my presentation, because I will there, with help of my trusty assistant, include the song, some slides, and hopefully make it a bit more interesting. But this is the emergency, okay? If I come to some sort of ending in what I want to say, celebrate our successes. Appreciate the successes that we make. Learn from our failures. Keep our focus. It's about helping people. It's not about simply building up structures and building up business. Keep our focus. It's about raising up people or helping them to raise themselves up out of pits of dependency. Raise themselves up so that they can appreciate who they are and live life with dignity. And the bottom line is, we are best as church when we are church. I don't know if this has anything to do with what I'm sharing, but it stands out with me. Very simply, Pope Francis had a great line when he was talking at the conclave where he was elected Pope. He gave about a 300-word speech. And one thing he said was, when we hear Jesus knocking at the door, he's not knocking at the door of the church to get in. He's knocking at the door of the church to get out. And so he goes on from there. We all know what he says. We are called to be field hospitals, break down the barriers, build the bridges, move beyond, go to where the people are. This is us being us. And in part, I see that, I know that, I experience it, I do it with Caritas Thailand. But I also know the barriers that remain, the structures that hide us and protect us. And I know the fears and the resistances. Will we wait until we have enough money? Will we wait until we're strong enough? Will we wait until we get over our fears? I'm part of that whole thing too, okay? But we do what we can, we keep on doing it. I would say, my bottom line, it is, I am not an empire. I just want to be a religious, a priest, to be me and to live the gospel. I've always wanted simply to work helping people. In coming here and being with Caritas Thailand, I have found my corner in the world and in the church. It's enabled me to do what I've always wanted to do. Yes, I am an Augustinian. Yes, I am a priest. Yes, I am an Australian. But no matter who I am, I've always wanted to do something that was about helping people in need, who are vulnerable and who are poor. I found a place to do that, and that is here in Caritas Thailand. And so for me, despite all the failures, all the challenges and all that goes on, I found my little place where I can be me. In the end, that is transformative. And maybe, honestly, I will finish here. Good mission will always receive support, the real and needed support it needs. If we as church are doing good work and what is really needed in our world, good people are always there ready to support it. Good business people, good people in the wider world, in government and elsewhere. If we do the good mission, the mission that is demanded of us in building up the kingdom and reaching out to the poor, we will easily, somewhere or other, here through faith and in faith, find the support that we need. It might not be from the big government. It might not be from the big business. It might not be from the big donor, but it'll be there and we'll be supported. That, to me, is part of the way of transformation. I think I've said enough. I hope I've said enough. Let us appreciate who we are. And that, I think, as I've talked about support, maybe I've been in this game too long. I always think of, maybe, are they always saying it's about money? But it's about much more. It's about our social capital. It's about emotional support. It's about religious support. It's about being who we are. And as we are more who we are, so we can express that in what we do and in mission in the church, helping the poor, hopefully working to raise them up so that they can live with dignity and enjoy and exercise their rights. So thank you very much for listening to me. And as we say in Thailand, Sawadee Krap. Bye-bye.